new government is. That government has to get in very, very quickly and ensure that this never happens again, because it's a kind of national disgrace.
But Andrew, how fascinating. So he's in effect saying that the future of government is really in Gordon Brown's hands still. He accepts that and will sit back while Gordon Brown makes overtures to the Liberal Democrats? Or will he be making counter-overtures to the Liberal Democrats to try and get them to come his way?
What? I mean, he can't stop Gordon Brown lifting the phone to Nick Clegg at some point in the next few hours, if that's what happens, of course. But as you heard William Hague saying, this would be politically outrageous. Well, lots of things happen that are politically outrageous, and yet in politics they still happen. I think he will assert all the way through that he has a moral and a natural right to try to form the government, but that we live with the system that we live with. And after all, the Conservatives are not suggesting that the system ought to be greatly changed in that regard.
No.
A mixture of anger and resignation.
Nick Cameron was reported as saying that he disputed the right of the Prime Minister to try and carry on some weeks ago, and he was very, very keen to point out that he wasn't arguing with the Cabinet Office guidelines, with the civil servants, with the great and the good who've decided that's how the Constitution work. What he was saying, though, is if he'd won the election, he'd won the election. He didn't think that Gordon Brown should try and take it from him.
Let's try and find out what's happening in Birmingham, Edgbaston. Patrick Burns is there. There's been a recount, Patrick, and we were told that Gisela Stuart was high-fiving her supporters as though she'd won. Obviously, you may not know, but what do you think?
Well, it certainly, there was, as you say, a real surge of excitement in Labour ranks, and we saw several of the party workers running down the gangway there, and several high fives. And we can see ballot papers, you can probably see them now, being counted on the table. This doesn't look to me like a full recount. We know that part of the delay, this was, remember, one of the supposedly first declarers, and here we are 2 hours later than the original result was expected. We know there was some kind of issue about verification.
She seemed to be shrugging there. She was shrugging her shoulders there towards her supporters.
Yes, I think we have possibly a very close and surprising result on this night, where every time you try and generalise, up pops an exception. The exception is more common than the rule at the moment.
It is very strange. Do you think, Nick, as you watch David Cameron, you've seen his face, I think he's still there. I think we've still got pictures of David Cameron? No. Oh, no, we will. I'll leave the point for the moment. Let's go to Broxtowe, because we've got a declaration, rather theatrical set in Broxtowe, held by Labour, 42nd on the Conservative target list.
Candidate at the election is as follows: Cobb Christopher Paul, UK Independence Party, 1,194. Mitchell David, the Green Party, 423. Palmer Nicholas Douglas, the Labour Party candidate, 20,196. Shaw Michael Patrick, British National Party, 1,422. Soubry Anna Mary, the Conservative Party candidate, 20,585. Watts David Kenneth, Liberal Democrats, 8,907. The number of ballot papers rejected was as follows.
Okay, so one vote is enough, and actually there's a majority there of 389 for the Conservatives, who gain Broxtowe in Nottinghamshire, commuter suburbs to the west of Nottinghamshire, classic sort of Middle England seat, and the Tories gain it from Labour, 389, and a tiny swing, 2.6% to the Conservatives from Labour. It should have been quite an easy victory for them. And now we go to Witney for David Cameron's declaration. Large number of candidates cashing in on the fact that it's David Cameron. You can easily identify the candidates who may think they're not going to win tonight.
Well, I think David Cameron will be thinking now, how, if I win, do I do what the Conservatives have been briefing, that they will
Good evening,
produce a
ladies and
stable and
gentlemen.
responsible government?
We're now
How
in
can
a
it be done?
position to
Not if I win
announce the
Whitney,
result
but if
of the
I-
election of a member of
Who
Parliament.
wins
If I
the
can
election
claim to
overall?
win the election, whatever that may mean.
Votes cast.
But he must know that if he does win the
Barnes,
election
Dawn,
tonight, on
Carroll,
the home parliament, he's got a
Liberal
big job to do.
Democrats, 11233. Barshak, Aaron Alexander, Independent, 53. Bex, Colin Rowland, Wessex Regionalists, 62. Cameron, David William Donald, the Conservative Party candidate, 33973. Kirk, John Patrick Mervyn, Independent, 151. Goldberg, Joseph Daniel, the Labour Party candidate, 7511. Hope Allen, Monster Raving Loony William Hill Party, 234. MacDonald Stewart, the Green Party, 2385. Tolstoy Miloslavsky Nikolai, UK Independence Party, 2001. Wesson Paul Gerald, Independent, 166. There was a grand total of 117 rejected votes, and on a turnout of 73.757%, I hereby declare that the said David William Donald Cameron is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Witney constituency.
So David Cameron takes Whitney again, and he achieves a swing from the Liberal Democrats to the Conservatives of just over 6%. But now let's hear what he has to say at this crucial stage in the evening.
Thank you very much. Can I first of all thank the police, thank the returning officer Keith Butler and all of his team, all the people who worked in the polling stations across this large rural constituency, and all of the people who came to count the votes tonight. As ever, a brilliantly run, very well run general election day, and I'd like to thank all of those that took part. Clearly, in some parts of our country, that has not been the case, and an early task for a new government should be to get to the bottom of what has happened and to make sure that never, ever happens again. I would like to pay tribute to my opponents who all conducted this campaign in a thoroughly reasonable and straightforward way. I apologise for not spending as much time as I would like in the constituency over the last month as I travelled the length and breadth of our country. And I want to thank, as a result, all my local helpers who worked so hard in these elections and in the local elections. It's wrong to single out anybody, but my agent, Barry Norton, who knows, I think, every inch of this constituency and almost everyone who lives in it, did a fantastic job, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to him. Above all, I want to thank people in West Oxfordshire who once again put their trust in me to be your Member of Parliament. And let me say this, whatever happens tonight, whatever the future may hold, I will always work hard as a constituency MP, standing up for your interests, taking up your cases, acting on the things that you care about. It is an immense privilege and a pleasure to represent this wonderful part of our country. 85 rural parishes, wonderful market towns, a lovely part of our country, but not without its issues and its difficulties. And whatever happens, I will go on standing up for you and being a good constituency MP. Now, nationally, we have to wait for the full results to come out. But I believe it is already clear that the Labour government has lost its mandate to govern our country. I can see, although there are still many more results to come out, it looks as if the Conservative Party is on target to actually win more seats at this election than we've done at any election for perhaps as long as 80 years. And I think that we should be proud of the campaign that we fought. It was a positive, it was an energetic campaign, it was a campaign about bringing change to our country. It was not a campaign that needed to make negative points about others. It was a positive campaign we should be proud of. Most important of all, what is clear from these results is that the country, our country, wants change. That change is going to require new leadership. And whatever happens tonight, we will stand ready to do all that we can to help bring that leadership, to help bring strong, stable, decisive and good government for our country. And what will guide me in the hours ahead, and perhaps longer than the hours ahead, will be the national interest, to do what is right for our country, to make sure we have that government, we have that stability, we take the right decisions. We do live in difficult times for our country, but this is a great country and we will come through them and be stronger. And at all times, what I will do is put the national interest first to make sure we have good, strong, stable government for our country. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, David Cameron saying that we have to wait for the result, but Labour has clearly lost its mandate to govern, and they're on target to win more seats than they have for 80 years in a general election. The country wants change and new leadership, and he is ready to bring leadership, and that's what will guide him in the hours ahead. Not actually claiming to be that leader, to take over government, but saying the others don't have the right to stay, or Gordon Brown anyway doesn't.
He can't do it because the results don't yet let him do that, but there was a real sense, I thought, of uncertainty in the way he spoke. Whatever the future may hold, he said at one point. Whatever happens, he said at another point. He stood ready to do something, not saying, I am now going to be the guy who does this for you.
Ready to bring leadership and to bring the stability the country needs, and that kind of thing.
But without any hint that we've got yet from Conservative sources exactly what that means. We're clear what Gordon Brown and the Labour Party mean by it. They are clearly signalling that if they could, they'd form a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. We are not at all clear from the Conservatives yet if they fail to get a majority, and we've had quite a few results in that where they should have gained seats on their target list. Target number 11, target number 12, target number 92.
Are you, sorry, I just get this straight. Are you suggesting that he might be talking to Nick Clegg and saying, look, Brown is finished quite clearly, Labour's finished, let's talk?
I'm suggesting that this is not going through his mind for the first time. He's had a lot of warning about this. The Tories at one stage hoped and believed they'd easily get a majority. They've had quite a lot of warning that they won't. They've had a lot of thinking to do about the relationship with parties like the Ulster Unionist Party, the DUP, but they must have thought through in detail what their approach to Nick Clegg would be if they need it, in order to say they can secure a government. Now, that wouldn't mean a coalition necessarily, David. They could come to an arrangement with the Liberal Democrats that the Liberal Democrats didn't try and defeat them in Parliament in return for some promises on their policy agenda.
Will there be, yes, demands for change in the electoral system, which you might or might not leave? There are more cars on the move. There are cars on the move everywhere at the moment. I've just been watching pictures of David Cameron leaving Witney, and here is Gordon Brown leaving Fife on his way to the airport. Let's hope the volcanic cloud has vanished, and I assume going to, I don't know which airport, Edinburgh, I imagine, to come down south to be in Downing Street, or he goes to Stansted and then on his way to Downing Street, where he'll wait for the rest of the results to come in.
That's right, but it's the most curious of all nights, isn't it?
Isn't
in the
it
sense
bizarre?
that no one has the face of a victor.
But there's no sense of real drama. It's just everybody biting their nails, really, and waiting and waiting and waiting. You haven't got from anybody except David Blunkett saying Labour's lost. It's the only person who's sort of broken cover and said, I agree, something's gone wrong.
The reason for this, I think, is that David Cameron is acutely aware of not only how difficult it would be being Prime Minister anyway at an economically difficult time like this, with the trouble that we're seeing in the markets now, but how much more difficult it will be if he does not appear to have a clear mandate and is fighting for every vote. I'm going to embarrass Professor Bogdanor now. He studied with Professor Bogdanor. He knows constitutional history.
Yeah.
He knows how difficult it was for governments in the 1920s.
All right, well, we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, but Edinburgh South West, Alistair Darling, Chancellor of the Exchequer, he'd have been watching the markets tonight. and this is his seat about to declare, and then we'll talk to Vernon Bogdanov because he tutored David Cameron, so he'd know the kind of man he is and how he'll react in these circumstances. But let's just get this result for Edinburgh South
Liberal
West.
Democrats, 8,194. Colin Anthony Fox, Scottish Socialist Party, 319. Jason Jeffrey Rust, Scottish Conservative and Unionist, 11,026. Colcap Stewart, Scottish National Party, 5,530. And I declare that Alistair Darling has been duly elected to serve in Parliament as a member for the Edinburgh South West constituency.
South West. So Alistair Darling now speaking at his count at Edinburgh South West.
For the efficient way in which you conducted the count this evening. I'd also like to thank the police for all the work they have done, not just at the count, but throughout this day. And also to thank my fellow candidates in this constituency for the way in which they conducted this campaign. And lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank everyone in Edinburgh South West who supported me today. It is a great honour and a privilege to serve as a Member of Parliament for a constituency in this city, and I look forward to serving my constituents in this next Parliament. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, well, taciturn Alistair Darling as ever, not giving any games away, not talking about the state of the country or what's happened to the economy or what's going to happen now.
Interesting thought, David. If we don't get a change of government straight away, he will stay Chancellor. He will have to deal with the markets and the crisis in Greece and so on and so forth.
John Simpson is at the airport at Edinburgh, where the Prime Minister is just on his way to come down south to Stansted Airport. John.
David, hi. Actually, I'm on the plane, and so is the Prime Minister, and we're on our way. We'll be just taking off very shortly, I think. Strange mood among Mr. Brown's entourage. The earlier hopes seem to have faded, and yet everybody, of course, has to say, well, we won't know until the last results are in. It's all kind of clear, but it doesn't look to me as though that brief hope that seemed to exist really just before the exit poll came out. That hope is still going. I mean, it seems to be fading pretty fast. I mean, every time there's a Labour win, a little shout goes around and everybody cheers up a bit. But I just think it's slipping away, and they can feel it slipping away.
So, John, if that's so, you would speculate that Gordon Brown might well tomorrow or later today, I'm forgetting it's Friday, not Thursday, resign as Prime Minister?
I don't think he'll do that, because I don't think he'll give the game up until the game gives him up. I'm sure of that. But if it becomes, once we've got all the results in, once we can see what's happened, I don't think he'll go before then. I'm fairly sure of it. But just even that speech when he was elected had a very sort of elegiac sound to me, as he was sort of recounting all his achievements in office. I think he's fully prepared now to go, and he'll just see whether actually the circumstances are right and when they are right.
I suppose Nick's watching. Well, we're watching you on the tarmac there, John. So don't go away. But I suppose, Nick, there's no way that Gordon Brown might stand down and make way for another leader, a different leader of the Labour Party, because if he is deflated, demoralised by the campaign, feels like that rather valedictorious speech that he can't do much more, do you think there's any way he might let the Labour Party stay there, say we must have another leader and who could talk more easily to Clegg?
Well, the argument's built into his own words. He says he wants a stable government. If there were an offer, in effect, for a stable government involving the Liberal Democrats, but not him, involving another leader, he would have to, by his own words, recognise that. Don't underestimate the personal...
Nick Clegg could say to him, look, I can't do a deal with you. I said during the campaign you were finished if you didn't get, majority. But I could do a deal with somebody else because we are the progressive left and we must stick together.
Perfectly possible, although hugely controversial as that figure, that new Prime Minister, if it ever happened that way, would not have stood in the debates. Don't forget the personal element here. It's a huge personal rebuff for Gordon Brown. He didn't get formally elected. Of course, he was elected as leader of the Labour Party, but there wasn't another candidate against him. He has not stood for election as Prime Minister. He will feel this moment very, very painfully, not least because he believes, and as he travels around the world, he is told that he got a lot right in this economic crisis.
But he must have seen it coming because he knew from the opinion polls, the popular sentiment, a majority of it was against him, not for him, didn't it?
But in the last few days, they had a sense that something was picking up for the Labour Party. He found his voice. There was some passion there. They had a hope there. But there's a difference, David, between knowing it's going to happen and it happening. And it's horribly painful.
John Simpson on the plane there, is that the view of the people travelling with Gordon Brown?
I suspect it is privately. I mean, it's the kind of thing nobody obviously wants to say at the moment with a lot of journalists hanging around listening, but I suspect it is, yes. And I mean, both you and everybody else there knows better than I do, since my area is mostly foreign affairs, what the state of play is likely to be. But I mean, it's just very difficult now, I would have thought, to have it possible for two parties, neither of them have done very well, to link together. And I think that's really what people here are saying.
Vernon?
The final test is what happens in Parliament with the Queen's speech, which is on May the 25th.
Or what they think might happen if they wait till then.
Yes, and the test would be, could Gordon Brown or some other Labour leader get through a parliamentary debate? Those are the rules. The Prime Minister, there's no vacancy in the post of Prime Minister until Gordon Brown resigns or is defeated in Parliament on the 25th.
Now look, we've not talked to you. We've missed a trick with you. You taught David Cameron.
Indeed.
You know David Cameron.
Very well.
Tell us about him.
Well, he's one of the ablest students I've taught. He got an outstanding degree. But even more important than that, he's got a very fine temperament for a politician. He's very cool, he doesn't buckle under pressure, he reflects and thinks before acting, and he will know what to do in this situation. And I think the speech he gave in his constituency was a very good sign of that. Very calm, very cool, not triumphalist. It hit the right note, I think.
Could you teach him, Vernon, though, about the elections of the 1920s when exactly the sort of deals we're talking about between other parties had to be done? Because he studied a lot of this, hasn't he?
I suspect all this is etched on his brain.
I think that's a yes.
I think it's a yes, but it's very rare that a university don claims that his pupil remembers anything that he's said or agrees with any of it. You not only think that he's the cleverest pupil ever, but he actually agrees with you.
He's one of the ablest pupils I've taught. He disagrees with me on a large number of things, but nevertheless, I think he's absorbed a great deal of my teaching.
Right. In the pitch black to your right, Vernon, is or was the Prime Minister's plane on its way to the airport. I think we can leave that enchanting view for a moment because it doesn't show us anything at all, and rejoin Jeremy Paxman. Jeremy.
Oh, David, well, thank you very much. Well, it's that sort of stage of the evening when we really need to know who's going to be the next government, and we're joined now by Liam Fox and David Miliband. Liam Fox, state your case first.
Well, we've been at the count here in North Somerset, so we've not been au fait with all the latest results. Clearly, we've got some time to wait to get a very clear picture of what's happening. The swing doesn't appear to be uniform, but anyone could have told you that already. I think it's very clear that the public have voted for change, and I think it's clear that Labour have. I think we now wait to see how the numbers tally up, and that may take some time. We may get no sleep tonight, and it may be well into tomorrow before we see what the final numbers look like.
OK, David Miliband, you state your case as to why we should continue to be governed by you guys.
I'm terribly sorry, Jeremy, but I really could hardly hear what Liam Fox said, so I apologise for not being able to engage very well. I think you asked me where I think things stand. As far as I can see, the opinion poll or exit poll projection that you did at the beginning with the other broadcasters, suggesting that no party would win this election, is being borne out. There are some remarkable wins that Labour is achieving in places like Gedling and Telford, and so that suggests to me that the prediction of a hung parliament remains the case. If indeed no party has won an absolute majority, then it seems to me perfectly reasonable and right that parties should talk to each other to see if they can find common ground to establish a strong and stable government. There's no harm in that. It's a good thing to do when the voters have clearly not embraced any of us and given us the absolute majority that we were all seeking.
Okay,
I hope that answers the question that you asked, but I'm terribly sorry if it doesn't. But I didn't really hear it terribly well.
You're very kind. You're a very clever man. You've asked exactly the question you couldn't hear. Lord Reynard, you're sitting here, senior Liberal Democrat strategist. You could be the kingmaker. Your party could be the kingmakers.
Well,
who would you go with?
What we always said is the people are the kingmakers. Now, you and the politicians have spent weeks arguing. Today, the people have been speaking, and they haven't finished speaking. I think we have to let them finish speaking first, and then probably take a little time just to consider what message it is that they have sent.
So you have no view?
I think what you have to do is pay respect to the voters, let them have their say. Let's get the results in.
Nick Clegg made it quite clear, did he not, that the
said.
first option should be given to the party which had the largest number of seats.
Well, no, what he actually said was that the person who perhaps has the largest number of seats and the largest mandate should have the first opportunity to see if they can form a government. But that, of course, is the first opportunity for them. What we actually think needs to happen is the parties all need to work together rather
So
than
you're
more.
up for hire,
and if no one party actually has a majority in the House of Commons, that's no bad thing. There's no one party in the House of Lords where we all sit. What happens is you actually need the support of another party to do anything, and that's not a bad thing.
Oh, the House of Lords is some kind of democratic model now, is it?
No, it needs to be reformed to make it democratic. Labour should have done that and hasn't done that. But what does work in the House of Lords is a lot of legislation is revised very successfully in the House of Lords. And many people think that's a good thing. Now, if one party doesn't get all its own way over everything, I think that gives people more of what they want.
OK, Liam Fox, do you find this prospect of horse trading attractive?
Well, I think that one of the things that is difficult for the public when you get into a hung parliament territory, if that's where we end up, is that the decisions about what programmes will be followed will be decided by politicians behind closed doors rather than by voters at the ballot box. It's difficult to know exactly where we will end up. But what's very clear is it looks as though we're going to make the biggest number of gains that any party has made in a single election probably since 1931.
Just forget
Labour making very heavy losses.
sloganising for a second or two. Let me ask you a very simple question.
Well, I think it's important to put it in context.
Let me ask you a very simple question. Can you imagine doing a deal with the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I think that the first thing is to determine what programme we have to have. If other people in the House of Commons would support the Conservative programme, then that would be one issue. But the idea that we would trade away principles, I think, is quite another.
It's about 3:20 in the morning. Couldn't we just have a straight answer? Can you imagine circumstances under which you could do a deal with the Liberal Democrats?
I think we will just wait to see what the result is first, Jeremy. And then when we get the result, we will look and see what programme the country needs.
Well,
and rather than talking about what politicians want and who they like,
David
let's get a
Miliband,
good programme for the
you've actually
country.
ruled it in, haven't you? Can you hear me? David Miliband?
Were you talking to me, Jeremy?
Yes, I'm so sorry the comms are so bad.
Noise, but I can't hear your voice. Try again, and I'll listen very carefully.
See if you can do a bit of lip reading if you've got a monitor there. I'm saying you exercise no such inhibition of the kind that Liam Fox is suggesting, that there had to be a great thinking about it. As far as you're concerned, there's enough common ground for you to enter immediately into discussions.
Well, just so you know about the lip reading, your TV screen has gone down because it's raining. So the lip reading is going to be rather impossible. But I think I heard you ask whether or not I was barring or would be saying that there was impossible to imagine circumstances in which talks would take place. I think that if the voters have decided collectively that there is no party that can win their affections in 325 constituencies, we're honour bound to recognise that we're in a new political situation. And it's very old politics to say politicians shouldn't talk to each other. Of course we should talk to each other and see whether or not there is common ground that can provide strong and stable government for the country. That must be the right thing to do.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me right now, David Miliband? Because
Well,
we're being
what I
told...
can hear is every third or fourth word.
Well, that's probably enough, actually. Can you tell me, we're being told that talks have already begun between Labour and the Liberal Democrats. Talks have already begun between the Labour and the Liberal Democrats. Is that true?
Well, I have absolutely no idea about that, certainly not to my knowledge. I mean, I've met my local Lib Dem here, but I don't think that counts as national level talks, because I've also shaken hands with the Tories, so I don't think that really counts.
All right,
as
thank
far
you
as
all
I
very
know,
much.
Every party has been...
Thank you very much. Sorry about the comms difficulties. David.
Jeremy, thank you very much. Well, the Liberal Democrats talk about balanced parliaments, but when you look at the pattern that's emerging here with 227 seats in, it doesn't look as if it's going to be, in any sense, balanced. It sort of tips one way, then it tips the other. It could be that the Conservatives, even with the support of those people who would be keen to support them, Northern Ireland Democratic Unionist Party and others, wouldn't have a majority, but equally, it's perfectly possible that Labour and the Liberal Democrats combined won't have an automatic overall majority.
I think that is why the biggest question tonight is what is in David Cameron's mind about his capacity to build a coalition. You saw fascinatingly there, David Miliband would love to have some sort of deal with the Liberal Democrats. He's got an agenda for change that he wishes Gordon Brown had adopted. Liam Fox is hugely reluctant. But David Cameron will be thinking tonight, what do I have to do? I can claim victory in terms of votes and seats, almost certainly, but I may not have enough. Is he willing personally, to which I think the answer is yes, to pick up the phone to Nick Clegg, but could he bring his party with him? A party that believes in single-party, powerful government, a generation of politicians brought up under Margaret Thatcher. It would be very, very difficult indeed.
Well, there was this idea that he could bring them in by saying, look, we won't support a change in the voting system, but we'll give you a referendum on the change in the voting system, all right, within a year. And by the way, we'll argue against it. But if you want to have it, you've got Labour Party that will do it. Now, would that be something that he might do and that would appeal to his colleagues in the Tory benches? Because after all, they've got the chance of power after 13 years.
I don't think it would appeal to them one bit. I mean, I think they're starting...
They wouldn't cut him off at the knees, would they?
Their starting position, I think, would be to go to the Liberal Democrats and say, it's in the country's interest to have stable government. We're not asking you to join us in coalition, but we're asking you not to bring us down as a
but there's a lot of politicking under the cover of stable government and the grand national needs and all that. Underneath it, people are fighting like ferrets in a sack.
Every single leader will claim they're doing what's necessary in the national interest. Well, think about...
and all journalists are doing what isn't in the national interest by arguing about what might happen. Or throwing doubt on whether it will hold.
I don't think the Liberal Democrats could support the Conservatives without a referendum on electoral reform, and I don't think Cameron could deliver that from his party, even if he was so minded.
Even if he said the Tories would oppose it? That they'd have a referendum, but they'd be
I
against
don't believe the Conservative Party would accept a referendum on the electoral system.
All right.
This is a trump for Gordon Brown. He can promise that. It's very difficult for the Conservatives to do so.
Well, Trump is putting it very strongly.
No, but I think
one hope the Liberal Democrats have of getting into the system, electoral reform, if Gordon Brown was prepared to offer an immediate referendum on proportional representation, the Liberal Democrats would think very hard about it. They're meeting on Sunday morning, the MPs. It'd be very difficult to reject that, in my opinion.
Interesting. So that's where your money lies. Let's join Jeremy Vine. Just have a look at the Tory battleground, Jeremy, can we? Because it is such a... Only you, Jeremy, only you can make it clear.
I wish I could. I mean, we're looking at these very irregular results, David, and trying to see the pattern. And we start with the map of the result from 2005, and then I'll show you that's the political geography where we are now with all the results in. If you can spot a pattern there, do describe it to us. We will put up the Tory targets now, the ones we started the evening with before we had even the exit poll. We were talking about this list of 250 seats, the seats the Conservatives had their eye on. The easiest one to get right up in the top left-hand corner, Gillingham, 15 vote majority, Crawley 37 votes, and so on. Down you go, down you go. These are all coloured in as they were, by the way, in 2005. And then the least vulnerable to Conservative attack, the bottom right-hand corner. Now, let me colour it up in the colours of the seats we know about so far this evening, because if we're trying to spot a pattern, surely this is the moment we can try and do it. So here we go. And let's point out a couple of things here. First of all, it seems to be the case that in this column and the one next to it, the easiest columns, the ones where the seats should be easiest for the Conservatives to take, where they have taken them, Battersea, for example, Chester again, seats up here, Basildon South, another one, 6-7% swings going on there. So they've taken them quite handsomely. However, immediately I have to say, look at these two seats here, Somerton, Eastleigh, Lib Dems have held them off. And one of the things predicted during the Lib Dem surge is that the Liberal Democrats would possibly save those seats, even in the first column. Well, they have. Same for the Scottish Nationalists in the second column, holding the Conservatives off. So we go down the board here, and you get to, remember I mentioned Waveney here, the 116th seat on the board. They need 116 for, it's just one along here, isn't it? No, yes it is. They need 116 for an overall majority. Waveney is the 116th. We don't have that one yet, but we do have Bolton North East, which is just above it. And the result from Bolton North East is that it's gone to Labour. There it is. So the situation, if you're looking at the board, 115th seat goes Labour. The Conservatives might start to worry. But then it gets puzzling again, because as you look down the board, we saw Lembit Opik speaking earlier from Montgomeryshire, all the way over the other side of the board. Huge swing to the Conservatives there. Kingswood, we heard about earlier, wasn't one that was necessarily in the Conservative plan to take that, but they did. Harrogate they took. So as you look, maybe we can just look at the whole board here. If there's any chance of spotting a pattern tonight, it's on this board right now. But I think actually we're going to have to see some more results. And crucially, these second, third, fourth columns, how much blue do the Tories get in there as these results come in?